Dan Lorang, it is an honour and a privilege to welcome you to the Physical Performance Show on this Coach's Corner episode. Welcome along.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Hello. And I'm looking forward to chat to you.
Dan, those in the endurance sporting world across the domains of cycling and long course triathlon do not need an introduction to you. I gave one at the top of the show. Your coaching credentials amazing, but you had to start somewhere. I think it'd be fun, and I know you've told this story before, but just a little bit of backstory to join the dots on how you found yourself in the role you are with Bora Hansgrohe as the head performance coach, and also obviously coaching the best, some of the best endurance athletes on the planet in terms of long course triathlon. Haug, Lucy Charles Barclay, and of course Frodeno. What was the backstory, Dan?
So I think I start with my first athlete. I think that's the easiest to understand, because when I started to study sports science in Munich, one of the people who studied with me was Haug. So I met her basically during our studies, and she was looking for a coach at that moment because she started with triathlon and was injured all the time or several times during the year. And I was looking for people who I could coach, who I could try to really, to implement the knowledge what I try to get from the books. And he said, "Yeah, let's go. I have no clue about coaching, so let's start." And we had a good personal relationship at that moment, so we started. And the first competition were really, the competition just around the corner in some small villages, really small triathlons, but that nobody really knows. And then from there, she grew as an athlete to second division in Germany, first division, national team, European Cups, and all that story. And with her, basically, I also grew as a coach. And for sure, then you start to coach more athletes. And I was always interested in different sports. So it's not that I said, okay, I just want to coach triathletes. But for me, it was always fascinating to help people in different sports and to understand the profile of different sports and to help them to achieve the maximum peak performance in these sports. And also, during my studies, I worked for sports medicine department there. I was in contact with a lot of different sports, from winter sports like biathlon, cross-country skiing, over to summer sports like cycling, running, triathlon. And so I keep on going that way. For sure, I was most involved in triathlon, and also worked 1 year for the Cervelo test team, for a cycling team at that time, I think 12 years ago now. And then got German. So in Germany, you have different countries, and got country coach in triathlon for Baden-Württemberg, then national coach under 23, lead national coach. And that was the point where I met Frodeno, basically as German national coach in 2013, or at the end of 2013, yeah. And and basically with him, it was, I would say, the next step. So with Arne was the first big step. Then you get a lot of experience with different athletes, and then he was already Olympic champion, so another caliber from athlete at that point. And making that transition from short distance to long distance, I have never done it in the past. He have never done long distance triathlon, so that was the big challenge as a young coach. And also for me, a lot of learning in that process. Also to work with an athlete who has already had that success. With Annie, it was more like we built it up together. So we grew together. And with Jan, he was already at the top at some point. And now you took him over. And so it was really a nice learning from there. And then I was in the German Federation for 4 years. And then I got the opportunity. So I wanted to change a little bit. And I got the opportunity to work for Bora Hansgrohe. That's a world tour, a professional cycling team, where I started as a coach, and where I'm now in my 7th season, and I'm now head of performance, head coach of the team, and now more responsible for the staff members and less for the athletes. So now I create a performance environment for our coaches and for our staff members, so that they can do a good job. and have more responsibility for them. So it's the first year now in this position. And beside this, for sure, I'm still really happy to be a coach in, for example, triathlon, and having the opportunity to still be involved in Jan's programs, Annie's programs, Lucy's programs, and some more athletes.
Yeah, wow. It's great to hear the stepping stones, Dan. And just to elaborate a bit more on your current role with Bora Hansgrohe, you said you are less involved with athlete management coaching at the moment, but more with creating a high performance environment and managing the team behind that. What are some of the roles that exist in that environment in high performance? What are some of the key contributors to the performance environment?
Do you mean now in cycling or in general in endurance sport?
No, sorry, to be specific, in the Bora Hansgrohe professional cycling team.
So you have the different performance, or you have a performance department, and there you have the nutrition department. So basically we have two nutritionists working for us. You have the coaches. So the main job of the coaches is to be in daily contact, making the training programs, also going to the training camps of the team, also sometimes to the races to support the riders as good as possible. So they are the closest person to the athletes. Then we have the sport directors. So in cycling, when you look at cycling races, these are the guys who are in the car behind, who make the strategy of the race, who make the race plan basically. And you have the physiotherapists. You have the soigneurs. So the soigneurs are more the guys who cares about making the food, making the bottles, taking care that everything is, all the jobs are done around. And you have the doctors. You have the chefs. So we also have 3 chefs in our team who are working when we are at the races in our kitchen truck. And you have your sport psychologist, who is also part of it. And then you have another part where what is really important in cycling, it's the material part. But there we have split it. We have split the human part, so the physiology part, that is all on my side. And the material part, that is on the side of our head of sport directors, Rolf Aldag, who is doing this together with our head of technical performance. Gerd Koniak is his name, and they care about the material. So for sure, there are also some links. For example, when you look at the time trial, you go to the track, you make track testing, aerodynamic testing. For sure, it's a mixture between material, physiology, and so on. So we have to work really close together. But another topics like, clothing or the bike itself or whatever, that's a pure material topic. And it's so specific that it's good also to split it. And so not one person can cover everything in these depths of all the topics.
Yeah, wow. So the team's a good 20 plus people deep?
Yeah, we have 30 athletes. So starting from there, and I would say 70 to 80 people around. So 110 people really. And that is also quite interesting when you work in both worlds, when you work in triathlon and when you work in cycling. So in triathlon, it's, you care basically, you have a small team, you have the athlete, you have the coach, you have perhaps a physiotherapist, and then perhaps a manager, and then it's already done. If you are in a federation, you have also there a little bit more an environment, but it's quite small and you can take fast decisions. It has also advantages, but in a cycling team, it's just quite big. And when you think about what is needed, that at the end of the day, there are 6 to 8 athletes at the start line. It's really a team effort to bring them there and to make them performing. So cycling is a really good example of a mixture of team sport and individual sport. So and especially in my position, I'm basically nothing if I don't have good people around me. So if I don't have the right people around me, I can coordinate and manage whatever I want. We will have no success at all. So I need good people around me, give them the trust, give them the freedom to work, to do their job, and supporting them and helping them at really where they need it. And try to give them a second opinion, try to overview things a little bit. But for sure, it's not about that I control it. It's more like helping them and helping them really to be in an environment where they can develop themselves, that way they can really play out their best cards. In the end, everything is done to be successful as a team.
Yeah, that's insightful. you've just elaborated, Dan, on a few, I guess, of the characteristics or perhaps values in the high performance environment. Trust, giving people the freedom to work, support and help for people, and then the ability for people to professionally develop skills, knowledge, expertise. Are there any other magic ingredients missing from a high performance environment there, Dan, that you'd share that are important in general terms?
I think for sure you can always have more. So you can have, for example, when we talk about material, for sure, if you have engineers in your team who really have the scientific background about how to build things, how the material is working, for sure this can help you. You can have, I know one of the biggest team, they have data scientists. So you have always, you get more and more data in the world of sports. And as a coach, basically you have to decide which data you are using, because to manage everything on your own, you can do this with one, with two, probably with three athletes, but then you come to a limit. So for sure, it could also be helpful to have a data scientist. So there are no limits to that. You can always think about some specificity. So no matter which topic you take, if you take the topic, I don't know, heat, you can look all around the world looking for all the experts who can help you in that topic. But on the other side, it's also a limited budget. So you have to, that's also what you have to keep in mind. So I can have a lot of good ideas and everything. So, but in the mind, I have to see, okay, that's the budget, what we have. How can we now use it in the best possible way to have the biggest impact on our performance? And that also let you make to get creativity. You are more creative, because if you have a lot of money, you just say, okay, we do this. For sure, that is not the case in our situations. We really have to be careful in which direction do we go. And when we have a topic where we see there is a benefit, for sure, our general manager is also willing to trying and hoping that there's coming out something. So you need a good project plan. You really need to work it out properly and then go for it.
The stepping stones to success. Dan, you mentioned your role, you still oversee under the materials umbrella, the physiology side for Bora Hansgrohe. What sort of, and obviously there's going to be some limits of what you can and can't share, but what are the key metrics that, you'll be looking at, or the coaches would be looking at? What testing might the cyclists be undergoing across the season?
So first of all, when we talk about testing, so they are important, technology is important, but when you talk to coaches, you will always come to the same point. The most important thing is that you have a good contact, good relation to your athlete, because a lot of what you are looking for basically is already in the athlete. So the athlete feels it. He or she can share with you the feelings, the experiences. So no matter what you are doing, you should not cut down the time that you spend in communication with your athlete. So I think that is the thing number one, and that will never change, I guess. And it's also good that it will not change. And now every tool that you use should just help you to better understand the athlete in a shorter amount of time. So the more time you can save to communicate to the athletes, because your diagnostic is better, your data analysis is faster, and the better it is. So that's why I'm really in favor of technology, of artificial intelligence, whatever there is out there, because it helps me to save time, to spend more time with my athlete, and to really focus on this. Because when we look at the last years, we always see the best performances came out from athletes who have a really good and close relationship to the coach or to the team. So we're willing to develop himself or herself, to share ideas, to have a working relation. It's not just getting a training plan, do the training plan, doing the next one, but really keeping on that working relation. That is also what drives you to success. And then when we talk about metrics, I think you listeners, they know a lot about it because there were a lot of great people already in your show, starting from basic things like heart rate, power, speed, lactate measurement. So I think this is something for sure what we are doing. now comes into more into the game in the last years. Core temperature, oxygen saturation, for example, these kind of things, and fatigue. Fatigue metrics is no matter what you take here. So that also depends a little bit on the coach. So I think what is important and is that you understand in the best possible way to control the intensity. I think that is also a key factor. If you are able to control the intensity, I think then you are also able to you can make sure that your athlete is really doing what you want him or her to do. Because if you want that the athlete train in, I don't know how you call it, zone 2, for example, you have to make sure that it's really zone 2 and not zone 1 and not zone 3. So I think the tools what you have today, they help you to better control the intensity. And this also makes the quality of the training better. I think that is one main thing, no matter how you're doing it. So I know coaches who work with all the tools that are on the market, but I also know coaches from world-class athletes who just take heart rate and perceived exhaustion, and they are happy with this, and they are really close to the reality. So it's not that they have to measure everything. So it really depends on how you as a coach are doing your job. So which toolbox do you want to use? In the end, you have to build, to build a house, for example. It has to be a nice house, but nobody tells you which tools you have to use for it, because you have your own methods to come to the result. I think for sure you should look left and right and see, okay, perhaps I can use a new tool. I can implement that tool in my toolbox. But on the other side, it's not that you should just fill up your toolbox with all the tools because they are there. No, you should find a way and say, okay, this tool really helps me in my way of working. And I see this difference also in our team. We have 5 coaches, and every coach has a slightly different toolbox. And that's quite interesting to see. And they are all successful. They have all athletes who won races, who showed world-class performances. And that's quite interesting.
Yeah, gosh. What you just shared is fascinating, Dan. Just reversing from what you just, I noted down, 5 coaches, 5 different toolboxes, AKA there's not one way to bake a cake or build a house, as you referenced. Not everything that can be measured needs to be measured. So an athlete and coach need to decide what's important for them. And then you said something that really jumped out, Dan, and that is that some of the best performances you've observed and witnessed firsthand have come from athletes that had good working relationships with their coach, which is predicated on communication. Any examples of this? Now, obviously you don't have to name names, but an example of what a good working relationship looks like. Is it just an openness to share? Is it more frequent communication? Can you just expand on what a good working relationship means to you?
Mm-hmm. I think the main word here is trust. So I always like to tell that story. It was 2019. It was for me as a coach, the most successful year I ever had in triathlon and cycling. It was just amazing. And at that point, our general manager, he was curious about, but why are his athletes so successful? Because from outside, everybody gets a training plan. We have good coaches. We have the same structure. But is it just by coincidence? Or what is there the reason? And he came back to me after several weeks and he said, perhaps I found it. And I said, tell me. And he said, I think it's trust. So when I talk to your athletes, they are 100% convinced about what they are doing. So there's no doubt. There's no 99%. It's 100%. We are convinced that when Dan is writing the program, when Dan is telling us this or that, this is the right way to go. And I think that is something when we talk about energy, if you have 100% trust, you don't lose energy about doubts. So you don't doubt about it. You don't think, perhaps I should do 5 more minutes more or less, or doing this kind of interval. No, you trust. Perhaps it's even not we all know that there are different ways to arrive to the same target, but to have the trust and to be convinced and just focusing on the program, focusing on what you are doing, I think this already helps to be really successful and to build up the trust, for sure, communication is key. So if there are questions, you need to have the answer as a coach. If the athletes ask you, why am I doing a 6-minute interval and not a 10-minute interval? You should have an answer on that. So at least an answer that makes sense, and that the athlete said, okay, there's a plan behind it. And this is something what I built up over the years. And that also needs time. It needs also the will to communicate, because I have athletes who they would be happy to don't talk at all for 1 week and just getting the plan and just saying, okay, doing the next week. So they are completely happy. So they would never say, oh, he has no time for me. No, that's their way of working. And you have some other athletes, they want to call you 3 times a day. And it's also fine. So, and they're finding a good balance. I think that's important. And you just need time with them, to understand what human being is behind that person, behind that athlete. Because the athlete is basically the person what we see, but it's you are not an athlete. You are a person. You have a personality. You have a normal life. And so to find out who is that behind that athlete, how is she or he working, thinking, and from the performance side, for sure, how is the body working? What is the physiology behind it, etc., etc. So I think that is the key, the main key, and it always comes back to this. So no matter which tool you try, it always comes back to this. When you have a bad relation, when you see that things are going wrong, when you see that trust goes down, and you feel this. So when you athletes ask questions like, but last year we did it like this, or this guy is doing it like that, probably we should change. When you start this kind of discussion, it's good. It's also absolutely okay for athletes to do this. But then this is often the moment where you feel now this trust is going slightly away. And probably, or I'm now even convinced, that is also to the point to say, okay, we are now at the point, perhaps here we have to go separate ways, just that your career can continue as an athlete, that you can get the best out of you. Because if you start to lose trust, you just lose energy. So perhaps now a new way can bring you to a new level, or not, that you never know. So it's always 50-50%. And as a coach, I think it's also important to be aware of that moment, and to also be open for that. So it's also here, I learned over the years, it's never something personally, it's just happening in your life, and then it's good to separate.
Oh wow, Dan, I'm a big believer in a similar philosophy. Just without trust, there's nothing to work with. There's nothing. You can't build anything without that all important ingredient. And you mentioned that there needs to be a will to communicate. There needs to be time invested, and the benefits of having trust are that energy is not dissipated in questioning and doubting. And there's a maxim that we've heard shared on the show before, Dan, and it's that the belief or trust in the training is as important as the training itself.
Absolutely. There are even studies about this. Or I think when we talk about placebo effect, for example, basically it's also nothing else. So you take something, or you're doing something because you think it makes you better, and in a lot of cases it makes you better because you believe in it. And there you see how strong this is, how strong your mind is. So when you really believe what you're doing there is the right way to go, for sure this helps you to perform. It's not everything. I think your show is the physical performance show, so it's not all about the mental stuff. It's also about training, about consistency, about right training methods. Don't get me wrong on that. But when you are a lot of years in the business, and you look, what are the big differences between athletes who really reach the top, who really reach the big successes, and the other who just, what is also good, but just got a top 10 result, or they are there, but never reach the top. Then the difference is not the training plan. That is my belief. It's not that they trained wrong. For sure, on one side, they didn't have all the capacity to get there, but that's only one thing. But the other thing is also that they were never in this flow, never in this kind of really trusting what they are doing, going 100% what they want to have. And that's what I observed in the last 20 years.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so interesting. Before we move off this idea of trust and relationships, I'm a healthcare practitioner by trade and training, a sports physiotherapist here in Australia. And it's so key to recognize that behind the injury is a human being with feelings, fears, emotions, doubts, beliefs. And so we might use questions in the consultation sense, such as, in your heart of hearts, Stan, what's your greatest concern about this injury? And, the athlete might say, well, I'm afraid that I'm never going to get this right. It's been going on for a while and therefore my career is over. Like, they're not in the room because of pain. They're in the room because of this great concern that they have. I'm just curious, in a coaching sense, are there any questions that you might ask routinely day to day, just in general conversation, perhaps 3 times a day, if there's an athlete calling you 3 times a day, that help you disconnect? Is there anything bothering you, or what's your greatest worry, or what's been your greatest win? Are there any sort of conversation starters you have, or it's just varied depending on the athlete and their personality?
In my case, I would say it's more like how they communicate, also how they execute the training sessions and how they comment training sessions. So when you know the athletes already for some years, you exactly know. So you look at the training session, even to, and it's not now about bringing heart rate to, so saying, okay, he had it or she had a high heart rate. It should be lower. So for sure, it was not a good training. It's not about that, but how it's executed. Is it on the lower level, on the upper level? What happens in the warm up? What is the comment after? So you immediately see, okay, the athlete is really in a flow, or there is something going wrong, probably. And also when you are in communication and how the mood is, for example. But basically, where I see it already is in the training session. So and then it's also the point for me sometimes to contact the athlete, just to say, if I see something, it's not that I call somebody and say, hey, I saw in your Training Peaks account or your Today's Plan account this and this. No, I just then ask, how are you? How was the day? And then basically they talk already because it's they want to talk about this. And some needs a little bit more time, especially when a session went completely wrong. I don't know, you make some kind of testing and it goes really in the wrong direction. They are disappointed. They are frustrated. They need a little bit of time. And then you talk about it. And my experience is, it's not about saying, finding excuses. So it's not about saying, but perhaps you had a bad day and we trained hard the day before. And no, it's about saying, okay, that's what we have now. And then also say, okay, let's look at it, and staying objective in first step, and then coming together again and then saying, okay, look, that was so that's what I see here. This is the good thing. This is the bad thing. We have to work on this and these points. And then also the athletes say, when I'm honest, perhaps yesterday, or the last 3 days, I was really stressed with this and that. And last week, this and this happened. So then you come together somehow. But it's not as a coach to say, you see a bad test result and say, just a bad day. We go on. No, I take everything for serious. We go through it. And that is important for me after it should be done. So when you have a bad competition, for example, you talk about it, you analyze it, and then it's done. We go on, we continue. It's not that we keep it in mind. The same for good things. The competition went really well. I really want that athletes enjoy it. They should enjoy that day. They should enjoy the next day. And then we come back to the process and say, okay, and we have to continue our work because, it's not that we are arrived already. So it's going on. So that's how I try to do it. And it's not the one specific question. It's more how they are doing the days, what they always, the things what they are always doing or every day doing their training session, uploading them, comment them. And that's why these comments are also important for me, just to see a little. It's not just the comment itself, it's more how it is written and how it is linked to the session.
Not just the comment, but how it's written. That's... Let's not gloss over that. That's significant, right? It's the way it's written as well. And I guess that comes back to knowing an athlete, how they express themselves and digging deeper than the surface level. Dan, it's a general question, but one that I know I am interested to hear from you on, and the listeners will be as well. And that is, if Dan Lorang had to nominate the top 3 characteristics of a successful endurance athlete, what would Dan Lorang's top 3 characteristics be?
First one would be having now I'm looking for the English term, having a high working ethic.
Yep.
Because endurance sport is a lot of work. There's no way around that. You need passion for what you are doing, because you do it every day, and when it's a pain for you, sorry for the term, but a pain in the ass to stay up in the morning at 6 to go for a swim. And if this is every day and it costs you so much energy, then you will not make it to the end, in my opinion. And the third one would be Bescheidenheit. It's on German. I'm now looking for the right word. So you always have. It's not that you should always doubt yourself, but a little bit in that direction. So never think that you arrived. So it's like questioning yourself, but not in a negative way. You always stay hungry for development. Always staying hungry. Perhaps this also express it quite good.
Yeah, beautiful. Because from the bottom to. Sorry, Dan, I cut you off. I do apologize.
No, these 3 things, I think this characters really well. These athletes really get to the top.
Stay hungry for development, for more. Never feel like you've arrived. I guess we're always learning every day. Passion for what you're doing. As you said, if you don't have that, you just won't survive. And have a high work ethic. I guess it's indispensable for an endurance athlete.
Yeah, but when you have the dream to be the best in the world, everybody talks about the good side, but you also have to be aware that it's a lot of work. It's passion. It makes fun, but it's a lot of work. It's and that is also something when I talk, for example, to new athletes. So if somebody contacts me, especially some years ago, and say, I want to go there, here, and then it's always the question: do you really want to do this? Do you know what it means to get there? And this is because it's also okay to be 10s or 15s in a competition. It's still a world-class performance. But you want to be the best or one of the best. But then you have to go the whole way. So there's no shortcut. You have to go the whole way. For sure, it's easy if you really love what you're doing. So when you talk to Jan Frodeno, for example, he is a triathlete. So he lives that life. He likes nearly every moment of it. When you talk to him, there's so much passion for it. And that's why it costs him so less energy just to make this daily training. So it's just because that's what he is at the moment. And that makes things easier. And but this is something when you look from outside, when you are a young athlete, you don't see this. You don't see all the work behind the scenes. You just see the nice Instagram videos or whatever and the victories, but you don't see what is behind. And I think that is important that you have this in mind. For sure, it's not the first talk, but it's if somebody comes to you and want to be the best in the world, and the other says, I want to be a lot of time at home, and I want to also to do this and to do this, and for sure I want to do my sport. You come to a point and say, no, it's not working. That's not how it will work. You need to recover. You need to take care about you, and not only 4 to 6 hours a day, perhaps where you train, but 24/7. You have to take care about your own, and that is not an easy one.
Yeah, gosh, there is always so much more, isn't there, than anyone sees. For the coaches listening in, Dan, same question. What would you say the top 3 characteristics of good coaches? Success, maybe good's maybe not the right word, but of sound coaches. What are the top 3 characteristics?
I think empathy is quite important, because this helps you to understand your athlete. This helps you to understand what is going on. I think that's really important. I think staying humble. So never think that you know everything. Really important. And being a good listener.
Be a good listener, stay humble, and be empathetic.
Yeah. I think this is some key characteristics, because if you are always the one who's talking, for sure, you will not learn nothing about your athletes. So it's really important to listen, and to listen carefully. I think that's important.
Yeah, gosh, very powerful principles there, Dan. Dan, just some sort of general areas with maybe a top tip or two around these areas. I'm always interested in this domain, obviously, as a sports physiotherapist, but injury minimization, unfortunately, injury prevention isn't an accurate term because, unfortunately, injury can be part of the endurance sport in life. But any coaching pearls that you've come to develop over your career to date around injury minimization practices?
I think the biggest game changer with athletes was always when we started to work together with a good physiotherapist, with a good physiotherapist. So to have this close relation to a person who is, in best case, 2 times a week, in some cases even more, in contact with the athletes, who can treat them, who can also give, I would say, feedback to the coach. How are the muscles feeling? How is the range of motion? How is the difference left or right? So these are really, really important information. You can measure a little bit of it if you are in a lab with the ECG, EMG or whatever, but to have this information daily is so valuable. So for me, it's really nearly a must when you go in a training camp with high load, that you have a physiotherapist with you, and that you have a good connection, a good team with physiotherapist, coach, athlete. And that's what I have always with my athletes. And that's really powerful because, like I said, having an injury can cost you time. It can even cost you your career. And we never want to run into this. But when you have, especially in these high load weeks, there is always the risk. So it's a fine borderline where you are there. So it's, and if you want to be one of the best in the world, you cannot, when you have here the line, you cannot left the space from 10% here. No, you want to go as close as possible. But for sure, you never want to have an injury here. And I think, in my opinion, this is a big game changer with the athlete, what I had in the past, what I have in the past, what I still have. And it's a big value. And we talked about team in cycling. I think also in triathlon, this team is crucial. So physiotherapists, sometimes the physiotherapist can also be the strength and conditioning coach, or you have even a separate person for that. We have your triathlon coach. We have constellations where we also have swim coach. Here, just you have to take care that it's clear for everybody what his role is. So that is really important. So if you as a swim coach, for example, think that that swimming is the most important sport and it's basically you athlete, then you have a problem. So you are part of the team. And basically the triathlon coach, it's managing this and try to bring everything together. And then it's working really, really good. So I have really good experience. You also need to find right people to do this because you have to take yourself a little bit back. You are working in this team environment, but it's on the other side so much fun, to work together with people and to share the good things, and even having people to talk about when it's not going in the right direction, to think about together, to collect ideas, to collect different perspectives. That is also a big or important thing in coaching, getting different perspectives, because as a coach, you have just your own perspective and there's no real control. So I think if you're working as a coach, there's nobody really controlling your work. You do it as good as you can. You have the athlete, but it's not that there are 3 people behind who making the control of what you are doing. So that's why I think different perspectives can always help you to do a better job.
Yeah, it's really insightful. I did write down good physio, and I think you then expanded on what that looked like, communicating with the coach, perhaps doing the S&C, regular feedback to the coach, and fitting into the team. And
perhaps I wanted to add,
please.
Just to want to add here, sorry to interrupt you,
please.
This experience in high performance sport. So that is quite, it's also working without it if he or she has time to come into it, but it's different to do treatment in high performance sport than to do treatments to be healthy. I think there we both agree. And this experience is also so important for the coach, because when it comes to a decision making, do we do this intensive run session tomorrow? Yes or no? For sure, if somebody is just caring about health, you say, yeah, for sure not. Too much risk, you cannot do it. But if somebody is caring about performance, he understands probably we need that session to get the best out of the athlete. So we can make that happen. If I know I treat her before the session, after the session, I can guarantee you 90% nothing will happen. There's no 100%, but that is a really, really important information. And then you go as a team, then you take the decision as a team. Okay, let's do it. And normally everything goes good. If it's going in the wrong direction, so if something happened during that session, then we also, let me call it, we lost as a team. So then it's also, okay, we went into that risk, it went wrong. Okay, but we talked about it in front with the athlete, with the physiotherapist, with the coach, and we went for that decision, and now we are all behind that decision.
Yeah, gosh, that's a good distinction between general health and well-being and high performance sport, and decisions have to be made contextually, and the decisions in high performance sport are very different to general fitness and well-being, as you just say. And you said, you're trying to find that line. You don't want to leave a 10% gap. You've got to butt up right against it. And there's a maxim that's come through in the show before, Dan, and that's, by definition, high performance sport is risky. By definition, It has to be that way. Dan, a couple of other domains before we throw a couple of set questions your way. Fueling, and we might start there. Like, it's a huge topic. You mentioned in the professional cycling outfit, there's 2 full-time nutritionists. There's employed chefs. From a therapy point of view, I've certainly seen the rise in awareness and implementation of fueling strategies to help minimize injury risks, such as bone stress injuries through energy deficiency. What are a couple of key pearls you could share with us from your vantage point about fueling, Dan, for the endurance athlete?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the knowledge about fueling went up over the past years. Not only how you can fuel well, but also what are the consequences if you fuel well or if you don't fuel yourself well. So I think that is the big change in the past years, because even 10 years ago, or perhaps even 15 years ago, they tried to have a lot of carbohydrates in competition and so on, but there were a lot of other theories going around. You know that stuff going into training, never drink and eat. So something like this. So some old stuff, what is going around, because nobody really knew what happens on the physiology side. Now we know a lot more. And that's why nutrition is one of the key factor. And like you said, not only to perform, but to be able to do the training, to be able to stay healthy, to be able to stay injury-free. And that's why I think now we're coming to a period where, basically a training plan, there's also a nutrition plan linked to it. You don't have to make it complicated. The first thing what you have to take care is with a healthy athlete who has his normal body weight is that the athlete is getting enough energy to be able to do the training, to recover well, and what I mentioned before. And now is the question, how does the individual athlete reacts on certain products, on certain mixtures? So this is something what you have to test. What can be a good strategy for the race? So this is something what you really have to test by experience. And then we don't talk about supplements and what could be a benefit or a negative point about supplements. We now just talk about energy, especially carbohydrates. And we see that they're the strategy that's, it gets more and it gets more and more important to being well fueled when you want your body is performing. And we see this also in cycling, for example. So there's a big change in cycling over the past 2 or 3 years. I would say it's getting faster from the beginning on. So, and also more young athletes are already at a high level. The races are more aggressive. And the consequence out of this is that you need more energy. So if you looked at the cycling race 10 years ago, go. Often you have in the stage race, Tour de France, you have the first 100Ks, 120Ks easy, and then comes the last climb, so the second last climb, and then you have basically the main attacks, and the race starts. And now it starts from the beginning. And that's why nutrition becomes so important, because it's in the end not the guy who has the highest FTP who will win the race, but it's the guy who is able to push the highest power numbers after 4 or 5 hours of racing. And there for sure, energy is crucial. And if you are doing an Ironman, you can be a super marathon runner, but if you're just running out of fuel, there's no chance that you can deliver your performance. I talked to Annie, for example, after Kona this year, and we talked, I think 30 minutes about her run. So after the race, and she can run better. She knows this. And we also know that she can run better, but she didn't feel so well. And then just in the sides, basically we were at the end of the conversation, and she said, what I want to tell you is that I was not able to eat all my gels on the bike. Half of it was still in the bottle. And I said, but now we can restart the whole conversation again. Because it's a completely different starting point now. And even now the explanation is even simple.
That's the fueling, huge area, huge topic. It's just great to see people talking about it. I'm encouraged by that. Dan, recovery, strength and conditioning. What are the observations of strength and conditioning in the professional cycling peloton versus long course triathlon?
It's a good question, because I think there's still no consensus about what is now the best to do. So first of all, should you do strength training in endurance sport? There are studies who say yes, others say no. I say in triathlon, about especially for injury prevention, I think it's really important to do it. In cycling, if you are a sprinter, if you are a classic rider, I think also there it makes some kind of sense. If you come to a pure climber, there were different opinions, and there are also different approaches, even in our small team already. So with 4 or 5 coaches, there are slightly different opinions about strength training. I think you have to make your experience with your athletes. You have to individualize it. I really believe that maximum strength and explosive strength training are quite some key factors in endurance performance, that you can use them. I'm not so a fan. I know a coach who has good experience with it, but myself, I'm not so a fan of strength endurance in the gym. There, I'm not so a fan. I more like to do this in the specific sport. So on the run, on the bike, and swim. But probably we talk in 5 years, and I tell you, I made a good experience with it. So I think that's not really a clear way. I always try to understand, and I had yesterday we had a coach call, and we talked exactly about that topic. And I said, if it would be possible to understand more what's happened from the physiology side there, then we would also be in a better position to take the right decision. But that's not the case. I know, for example, also from a friend of mine from Olaf Alexander Boo, so the coach from Christian Blumfeld, that they were also looking in that topic, but they were not so. It's also hard for them to really quantify what's happening here, and that makes it then also hard to plan. So, what is really the load of it? What is the impact, and so on. So basically, if I have an athlete who is really keen on strength training, for example, I know Lucy really likes to do strength training. And I think also with women, especially, you cannot really let it out. I think for women, it's really important to do it. Then I also implement it. And if I have a guy or a girl who is not so keen on it, then I reduce it to the minimum. But we are always doing it.
No, that's some great high level insight. It certainly does seem to be individualized, contextualized to an athlete's injury history, sporting demands, and of course their natural talents. Dan, and finally recovery. It's a big area. We've all seen fads come and go, but what are your top recovery tips?
Also there, okay, I know we are to 2023 already, and perhaps your listeners now expect something quite new coming from the space or whatever. No, sleeping. Sleeping well is the key factor number one. So most of the recovery really happens in the sleep. And and then going from there, that's the main topic, going from there, having a good sleeping hygiene, looking how can you optimize your sleep quality. I think that is the first thing what you should look at. And there comes, what do you eat in the evening? How is your, how do you call mattress where you're lying on? How is the room temperature? When are you doing your last exercise? When do you take your last coffee to your, what is about stress in your life? So if you're lying in bed for 1 hour thinking about a lot of stuff, do you need some kind of, meditation or something to really calm down your body? You can also measure this. You can measuring your body temperature, for example, see if you really have a decrease of around 1 degree during the night, so that you really know that you are in this deep sleep phase. Mm. So I think this is really the factor number one: monitoring sleep quality, and factor number two is minimizing all the every external negative stress. Mm. And with this, I mean, for example, if you have problems with your partner, in your family or whatever, for sure this costs you energy. And for sure you cannot make like this and it's gone. But I prefer that an athlete talks to me and say, hey, Dan, I need 2 days to sort this out. Just taking some time for my family, going 2 days to the beach, having a nice weekend together, and then we can go again. It's much better for me than always having this kind of stress from the family and feeling something is going on, and they never really have the time to take care. So that's why that's really important. That's just one example. You can also have negative stress from, for example, for age group athletes, if they have stress in the job. So take care about these things, because they really cost you a lot of energy, and because it's recovery topic, it costs you a lot of recovery time. This is one thing. I also think what helps now is you have different devices to monitor, for example, heart rate variability or rest heart rate. I don't know what you ever want to take. If you take a Whoop band, an Oura ring, or whatever device you want, this also helps a little bit better to understand, for example, what happens when you drink alcohol in the evening. It's quite funny, when you drink alcohol in the evening, you see it immediately in your HRV, for example. So it's not that you should never drink alcohol, but you better understand what has an impact on your recovery and what is perhaps beneficial for your recovery. And the better you understand your body, the easier it is for you to take the right measurements to have a good recovery. So these are the two main things: sleep and stress. Yep. And then we come to the normal stuff. Like, for example, coming from training, try to get some energy immediately after the training, fueling well in the training already. I think that is quite important. And then we can talk about general thing like cold water immersion if you want to do this. So there are a lot of different strategies what you can do to help your body to recover better. But the main thing is the sleep and external stress. And I forgot one thing. That's why I come back to it. You want to stay healthy, because if you get sick, you lose training, you lose performance. And a big factor for the immune system is stress, to less hours of sleep. So you can try this. Just try to sleep less over several periods. You will get sick at some point. There's no way around this. So that's why it's also so important to keep your immune system stable. The same if you don't eat enough. If you come home for a really hard training, it was a little bit cold, you don't eat, your immune system you have the open window effect, you have too less carbs in your body, there's a high risk to get sick, and you don't want to get sick. That's why this easy things helps you to recover faster. And all the other stuff is just a little bit on top. So supplementation, these recovery boots or whatever you want to take. So there are this stuff going around. Yep. But the main things are the three things what I mentioned.
Yeah, gosh, they're the big rocks. Dan, you've been very generous with your time and expertise, and we are so appreciative of your willingness to share. We ask every guest of the show, and we have done so for 7 years now, 2 set questions. And they are, if Dan Lorang could boil everything he's learnt across the years, your coaching career, into one piece of advice to help listeners of this show perform at their best, what is Dan Lorang's single piece of advice going to be?
Keep fun in what you are doing. That's for me so important. If I want to take out again the example of Jan, I can also mention Lucy or Annie. If I talk to them, they love what they do. And I see so many athletes, especially also age grouper, who they just look at the time. They just look, I need to do an Ironman in 10:15. And if it's 10:30, I'm not happy. No, that is not what it is. You should have fun. You should like to do triathlon. That's why you started. That's why you're doing it. So never forget why you started with that sport. And it doesn't matter if you are an age group athlete or if you are an high performance athlete, because that's just one part of you. You are not a bad person because you did a 10:30. You are not a bad person. You just perhaps didn't reach your potential level, whatever. But keep the fun in what you are doing. That's really, really important. And I also I tell the same to my professionals. Just let me give you an example. If somebody tell me, yeah, I saw there are so many devices on the market to measure, I say, yes, we can do all of it. No problem for me. But I know that you as an athlete, you don't really like to do that. I know you are doing sport because you like to feel your body. You want to minimize it as much as possible. So at the moment, I don't need it as a coach. So don't feel stressed about what's happening outside. Don't feel stressed what's happening on YouTube. We will do the best to get a performance out of you. But first of all, you should feel well with it. If I would give any Haug every day some training zones with heart rate, she would just get crazy. It's not how she wants to work. She wants to hear easy, medium, hard, and that's fine. That's and there you have to find for everybody the right way. But it would be a mess to tell her go with 135 to 140 heart rate, and if there comes a climb, then it should just go up 2 more beats. She would lose just the fun in what she would do, and then what would we have? Nothing.
So it's a great example. I'm with Annie there, Dan. If you prescribe me specifics, I'm out. But if you give me easy, medium, hard, I'm in. Dan, and finally, every guest of the show issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what is Dan Lorang's physical challenge going to be? Now, this can be very difficult or it can be an easy challenge.
No, I read from a guy, a guy who makes, it's not a big challenge, but I try not to do it, that he did over 1 month, every day, 100 push-ups. And it's easy, I know, but I try to do this, and I know I will sometimes perhaps forget or whatever, but why I want to do it is because he made it some kind of study. So he just made 100 push-ups every day over 30 days, and he got, I just have to see, a certain amount of strength gain and muscle mass gain. I want to test this, if this really works.
All right. Well, Dan, we will label this the Dan Lorang 100 push-up per day challenge times 30 days. And of course, I need to lead by an example here, so I will do it as well. So we will kickstart this when the episode goes live. And we've all got 30 days. So Dan, it sounds like a lot of fun and it should be great. But thank you so much once again. We wish you all the best for the 2023 season ahead, both in the professional cycling peloton, but also, of course, long course triathlon. And you're an absolute gem, and we really appreciate you sharing.
Like I said, thank you very much for having me, for having that nice chat. All the best for you. Also for your listeners, for sure. And perhaps see you back at another episode.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan.